The story begins in an astronomy class where the teacher was enthusiastically telling the children about the upcoming meteor shower, which they would be able to see with their own eyes in a few days. But the children were completely uninterested. They were all preoccupied with their own concerns. Meanwhile, Julia was talking with her best friend Susan about her new boyfriend Artem. Suddenly, a student in the class asked if today's meteor shower could be dangerous for the people on Earth. The teacher hesitantly said, "There's nothing to worry about. Only very small fragments are coming. They will burn to ashes on the Earth's surface." After school, Artem came to pick Julia up, and Julia left her friend alone. Later, at home, Julia encountered her father, Colonel Valentine, where they had a brief argument. Julia had originally wanted to go with her friends to see the meteor shower. But her father refused, fearing that it would be too crowded and that there was a risk of a stampede. "We shouldn't go to such places," she said. But when Julia told her boyfriend, he said, "It's okay, I'll get you out quietly." Meanwhile, a spacecraft entered the meteorites. Suddenly, the Russian military detected a UFO rapidly approaching them. They suspected it might be NATO work and immediately sent interceptors to shoot it down. Meanwhile, locals were gathering in the open area, including Julia and Artem. Suddenly, a car came speeding in and nearly collided with the people. This enraged Artem, who broke the car's side window. It was about to escalate into a physical altercation, but Artem's friends joined them. Seeing so many boys together, the car owner gave up the trouble. Then, Suzanne invited Julia and Artem to the rooftop of her house, where they had a great view of the mountains and the Shavarsh. But they were so engrossed in each other that they lost sight of their surroundings. Suzanne then gave them the keys to her house to give them privacy. Later, when they were in each other's arms, Julia was completely unsure about leaving her friend alone on the rooftop, and her suspicions proved to be correct. Suddenly, fighter jets attacked the spacecraft from space, and it crashed directly onto the rooftop of the building where Suzanne was. The explosion was so powerful that several buildings, including a highway and a stadium, were destroyed. At that very moment, Julia and Artem found themselves on the edge of a deep ravine, hanging on to pieces of a bed. Fortunately, Artem managed to rescue Julia and pull her out of the half-destroyed house. Following the accident, the entire area was sealed off by the military and police. Colonel Valentine and Parliamentary Representative Mill decided to contact the aliens to understand their motives. Just then, a 2-meter-tall robot-like creature emerged from the spacecraft. Mill welcomed it to Earth, but he was so terrified that he suffered a heart attack. Later, Valentine told Parliament what the aliens had said. They had requested that no one come near their ship while they repaired it. Then they would return to their planet. As the aliens hadn't attacked on their own, they had attacked without listening to them. Therefore, Valentine said that given the gravity of the situation, they should let them go without a fight. Meanwhile, Julia regained consciousness in her hospital room. She learned on TV news that the spacecraft crash had devastated the entire city. Then, she noticed a package containing Susan's headphones, which had the date of her death written on it. Julia was devastated by this. Deeply distressed, she found Artem and fled the hospital with him. A short while later, Colonel Valentine arrived at the hospital in an army vehicle. He didn't particularly like Artem, but he thanked him nonetheless for saving Julia's life. On the way home, Julia asked her father what would happen next. Valentine explained that a curfew had been imposed in the city, and all students would have to go straight home after school. But Julia's restrictions didn't end there. Valentine was going to be so busy with work that he couldn't take care of her, so he called her grandmother to look after Julia, which infuriated Julia. Things were now such that students were being transported to school in military vehicles. A memorial was held in the school in memory of Suzu, which only intensified Julia's pain and hatred for aliens. Then, during class, the teacher tried to convince the students that they shouldn't view aliens with hostility. He said that despite such a terrible accident, humans still have a chance to understand the alien world. They can discover the secrets hidden in space, but Julia's heart was filled with anger and hatred. She completely misunderstood what her teacher was saying and simply wanted to drive these aliens away quickly. Then, after returning home, Julia began to think about her future. She stole a pistol from her father's safe. An hour before curfew, she arrived at Artham's garage, where her friends were already present. They were all filled with anger against the aliens for roaming their planet without permission. At that moment, Julia told her friends that talking wouldn't help and flashed the stolen pistol. They planned to reach the location through an abandoned building where there was a secret passage leading directly to the spacecraft. Artham then warned Julia about the dangers ahead and asked her to wait inside the car. Inside the store, the boys found a strange gold device on the ground. They thought it might have fallen during the crash landing. However, Julia ignored Artham's advice and went to Suzanne's apartment. There, she saw a photo of the two of them and listened to her friend's last voicemail, which brought tears to her eyes. Suddenly, an alien appeared before her. Terrified, Julia shot it without thinking. Then, while retreating, she lost her balance and was about to fall when the alien grabbed her hand just in time, saving her. At that very moment, Julia saw that the alien's face momentarily seemed human. Meanwhile, Artham and his friends, hearing Julia's voice, arrived and attacked the alien. Their attack caused the alien to lose its balance and fall, tearing its exoskeleton apart. Then, the group noticed an empty suit filled with red liquid. They decided to take it to the garage and investigate it. Amidst the dust and debris, Julia found the body of an injured alien, and surprisingly, it looked like a normal boy. But she didn't tell anyone about it and left with the others. That night, Julia couldn't sleep and kept thinking about the alien. Then, in the morning, she stole her father's car and returned to the restricted area. The alien was in very bad condition. He was unconscious, so Julia somehow managed to get him out of the building. At school, Julia asked her classmate Google for help and suggested they leave class. Later, when Google saw the alien's body in the truck, he couldn't contain his excitement. He then told Julia that the alien's body structure resembled a human's and that a transfusion of the red liquid would be necessary to save it. Using her father's name, Julia arranged for a spot near a hospital and secretly took the alien to the operating room. With Google's help, she transferred her blood into the alien's body. Afterward, the alien briefly regained consciousness, thanked her, and gave Julia a strange bracelet. Later, they took the alien to the garage and tied it up. Julia returned home to freshen up. While taking a bath, she discovered that the bracelet could automatically transfer from one hand to the other and also gave her the power to control water. Meanwhile, the military found the alien device and took it to a lab for research. In a presentation before Parliament, a scientist revealed that the alien spacecraft was drawing water from the entire city. He calculated that water was crucial to repairing the damaged spacecraft. The government decided that, as part of the agreement with the aliens, the city's residents would have to reduce their water consumption. Valentine then appealed to the leadership to hand over the device to the aliens, but his request was rejected. The plan was to use the device to gather more information about the aliens. The next day, Google, overjoyed, informed Julia that the alien had regained consciousness. Julia, armed with a gun, spoke to the alien demanding answers. However, the alien responded in Russian. He introduced himself as Hen. He also explained that he needed his device, called Shiel, back so he could return to his ship, Sol. But Julia still harbored a hatred for aliens and spoke somewhat rudely. Then Hakan calmly replied, "I understand your feelings." Julia, slightly irritated, told him to put on her father's old clothes and get out of there quickly. Hakan complied without a word. However, he knew nothing about Earth's street laws. His strange appearance caught the attention of patrol officers, who assumed he was a drug addict and took him to the police station. Meanwhile, Artham and his friends were trying to break the alien's exoskeleton, but all their tools failed against the armor. When they cleaned the suit with a wet cloth, they saw that the marks on it were instantly disappearing. Then, a boy named Eugene put his hand inside the exoskeleton and saw that it was copying his every move. Suddenly, the suit began to cover his hand, which startled him a little. At that very moment, his friends pulled him out with great difficulty, but their haste left him with small cuts on his hands. Terrified, Eugene said, "I don't want to fight these aliens. If they want, they can destroy us." Hearing this, Russ said, "You're a coward." "Get out of here," Eugene shouted. "Yes, fight them. They'll kill you first." After this, Artham decided to get rid of the dangerous suit and made a plan to meet Colonel Valentine. Then, with his friends, he arrived at a checkpoint where people were waiting for water for a long time. Tensions were rising among the people, and an angry man threw a stone at a police officer. The officer didn't recognize the attacker and thought Russ had thrown it because he was dressed exactly like him. Artham and his gang tried to save their friend, but the police attacked them too. Seeing the situation worsen, Artham quickly put his friends in the car and told them to go to a safe place. There was chaos, and people were angry at the police, saying they were giving water to those aliens, not to them. Artham tried to stop the crowd, saying that attacking the police was wrong. He wanted to help the injured officer. But in the chaos, the other officers misunderstood him and began to consider him a threat. Then, the police beat the boy with batons, forcibly grabbed him, and put him in the prisoner van. Just then, Colonel Valentine arrived and asked Artham what he wanted to show him. At that moment, Artham looked at the injured police officer. But the officer remained silent out of fear, refusing to reveal that Artham was helping him. Disgusted by the police force's hypocrisy, Artham changed his plan. He gave up on telling Valentine about the exoskeleton and allowed himself to be arrested. Meanwhile, we see Hawken taken to the police station where attempts to fingerprint him were unsuccessful. Hawken then saw on TV that his device, Shell, was now in the custody of the Ministry of Defense. After some time, Julia calmed down and decided to help the alien. When she learned that Hawken was in police custody, she used her father's position to get Hawken released from the police. There, she met Artham, who promised to tell her father that she would get him released soon. But Artham angrily retorted, "I have nothing to do with your father. The entire system is corrupt." Hawken then explained to Julia that his device was in the military's custody and was, in effect, the key to his spaceship. Without it, he couldn't travel to another dimension. Julia then decided to help him so he could leave Earth quickly. The two then went straight to the Ministry of Defense, but the guard refused Julia entry without any reason. Julia quickly devised a plan, looked at Hakan, and lied, claiming she was pregnant. Hearing this, she was able to get inside. Her father, Valentin, was shocked. He angrily declared, "I'll have this man thrown into a place you'll never find him again." Julia then hugged him to calm him down and, in the process, cleverly stole his security pass. Later, the enraged colonel expelled Hakan from his office, and Julia secretly gave him the pass before leaving. Finally, Julia told her father the truth. "The guard wasn't letting me in, so I lied." Then, with a slight smile, she said, "It's been a long time since you've heard me. Do I have to get pregnant to talk to my father?" In reality, Valentine was so busy with his work that he had almost lost interest in his daughter's life. But Julia still harbored resentment. Since her mother was very ill, she hadn't had much time left for him. Then, Valentine sent her to the camp. He wanted to save her from pain, but Julia didn't even get a chance to say goodbye to her mother one last time. Meanwhile, Hawken, wearing a protective suit, entered the lab with the colonel's help. When he placed his hand on Shilka, a glowing object emerged from it, and he quietly escaped. This stunned those in the lab. Moments later, they set off an emergency alarm in the building, and Valentine immediately escorted Julia and Hawken out of the Ministry of Defense. Meanwhile, Artham was also released and told his friends that he would now wage war against the aliens. Soon, in the garage, the boys fitted an iron grill to the car's windshield. They prepared petrol bombs and placed some bats in the trunk. Artham then called Julia and apologized for his rudeness. He asked her to come to the garage, but Julia said, "I don't want to do that again." Julia then told Hawken that it wouldn't be possible to reach the ship without being noticed before curfew. So, do one thing, have dinner at home until it gets dark. Upon reaching home, Hakan met Julia's old blind dog, Charlie. As soon as Hakan touched him, he was shocked because he felt the dog's pain. Julia explained that she couldn't leave Charlie because her mother had given him the dog. Just then, Julia's grandmother came into the room, so Julia went to briefly explain what was going on. When she returned, she was astonished to see that Charlie could now see everything. Hakan then showed her his device, Shilka, and explained that it was a powerful thing. It was the source of life, and that having it with him for so long had made him immortal. Julia then fed Hakan pancakes, and gradually, some feelings began to form within him. Meanwhile, footage of Hakan, captured on a Ministry of Defense camera, was seen on TV news. The colonel rushed home looking for them. But Julia and Hakan somehow managed to escape. Meanwhile, Arlam had begun forming a team against the aliens. He began posting propaganda videos online, inciting people to rally against the aliens. Meanwhile, Julia found her friend's last gift in her bag, 2 tickets to a concert by her favorite artist. She decided to go with Hakan to the concert so they could hide in the crowd and wait for the curfew. During the concert, Hakan touched Julia and, through telepathy, transported her to his home planet, where he saw a world more beautiful than heaven. He explained that his planet was just like yours, but there was no pollution there. The people there were also like humans, but they hadn't ruined their planet in the name of reckless progress. Hakan then explained that his intention wasn't to attack Earth. He had simply come to visit out of love, and the military, upon discovering his ship, attacked it. However, Hakan warned that if anyone tried to board his ship, the ship's systems would completely destroy them.